Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for that heartwarming welcome. Greetings from South Africa. It's a pleasure to actually be here with you this afternoon. I believe it's morning here in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa, but your afternoon. So good afternoon to you all. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity that's been given to me to present to you today. And hopefully we can share some ideas and make your life as an academic a little bit better. I'd like to wish all of you that are celebrating a happy Ganesha Chaturthi. It's quite an important day, I believe, in India as well as in South Africa. So I wish you all well. To start off the presentation today, I think I'm going to try and change it up a little bit. I'd like you all to please, if you've got a cell phone or a computer that can connect to the internet, can you kindly join me at this address, www.kahoot.it, please. I'm going to stop sharing my screen on this particular one and take you over to the Kahoot screen. I just need some confirmation that I'm audible. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. Your voice.
Okay. If you can please join me on this at this address, www.kahoot.it, please. Okay. When you get to Kahoot, you should see a screen that looks like this, and there'll be a pin that you need to enter. So if you do not mind,
I am sharing the link, sir. I am sharing the link, sir.
Sure. When you join on, you'll see a link. You'll see a pin. If you enter that pin, you can choose any name that you want. If you don't want to use your correct name, you can choose any name. And please join me there. So I'm going to wait a few minutes for you to join. Everybody seems to be very shy. I don't see anybody joining yet. Please join. It's important because it forms part of my presentation. There we go. Lalit has joined. Gaurav has joined. Welcome. Welcome, Deb. I think we're a bit slow. My internet is slow. It's not picking up everybody as quickly as possible, but if you can, please join. I believe those that are live streaming as well and not actually joining via the link. If you want to play along, you can also play along. Colleagues, I'd appreciate if you could join me as quickly as possible. If you're having a problem, let me know by raising your hand or a text in the chat so I can help you. I see there's 35 people with us, and I've only got 6 participants so far. Colleagues, I'm going to wait another 2 minutes or so, but please, can you join? I'm still seeing only very few people have joined. This is not meant to be a trick. It's just meant to start off our presentation. So please join. It's just supposed to be fun for you. Colleagues, this does require your participation. I know it's different to what you're used to in a talk. You like to sit and listen to somebody explaining stuff to you, but I'd like to have as many participants as I can for this part of the talk. It'll help you understand where I'm going with the rest of my talk. Okay, I'm going to give it another 2 minutes and then I'm going to start. Otherwise, the talk will be delayed quite a lot. Okay, it looks like people are not willing to join, so I'm going to proceed. Mr. MC, is there some problem on that side? Is there a connectivity issue or staff just joining very slowly? Okay, colleagues, I can't continue to wait any longer. I'm actually going to start the game. I'd hoped for more participants, but that's fine. The guys that have joined, thank you very much. I'm going to now click start. So please watch the screen very carefully. As the screen, there are some questions that you're going to answer. When you answer the questions, it's fun. It's not meant to be a test, or it's not testing your knowledge or anything like that, to say how good or how smart you are. It's just meant to be fun. So I can show you some conclusions at the end of this to tie in with the concept of my talk this morning. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to start the game. I see people are dropping in and dropping out. I'm not sure if there's a problem. Can somebody give me an indication if there's a problem or anything on your side, or is it just that people are shy to come and play? Am I still even audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start. So you have to choose the correct answer by choosing the color on your screen. Okay, only one person got the correct answer in this game. Let's move to the next one. Read carefully. Remember to read carefully. SV, you're doing very well there. You're at the top of the scorecard. Where is Galgochias University located? Okay, you'll notice that it's timed. So the questions are timed for either 10 or 15 seconds. You have to answer within the time frame. Now, where is Galgochias University located? And the majority of you, 4 of you said Noida. One person said, said Greater Noida, which is the correct answer according to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. One person said Noida and the other said Uttar Pradesh. I'm not sure. Is there a state in India called Uttar Pradesh? Let's move on. Next one. Then there's Manoj, who seems to have gone ahead. Well done, Manoj. Let's go to the next question. Who handles the technical events at Galgochias University? Two people got it right. Techno Jam handles all of the events, the technical events at Galgochias University. Again, Sharda Yadev, well done. So true or false? This is the Indian national flag. There's one person who doesn't know their national flag. The correct answer is that it's false. Shadar Yadav has moved on to be first. Well done. What is the name of the Galgochias chatbot? Three people got it correct. It's Nia with a double A. Let's try the next one. True or false? Galgochias University supports student innovations. Does Galgochias University support student innovations? The 5 people that answered all got it correct. Well done. Manoj has now taken the lead. But SV is also doing well because he or she has 3 correct answers in a row. The next one, there's 10 of them. This is the third one. Galgochias University was rated 5 stars for excellence in teaching and learning in which year? In 2018. True or false? Nobody got it right. They were rated in 2017. According to your website, 2017 is when Galgochias got the 5-star for teaching and learning. Next, true and false. Galgochias requires that research papers must be 75% free of plagiarism before being sent for publication. True or false? The answer is false. According to your research policy, it needs to be 90% unique and free of plagiarism before you can send it out for publication. Well done, SV. Well done, Gaurav. So is it true or false that all the members of your school research committees at Galgotias must have a PhD? True. Well done. Yes. According to your policy, again, your research policy states that all members of the school research committee must have a PhD. And we're down to the last question. What is considered a failed course mark? Is it used in the calculation of the CGPA? Is it removed from the academic records? Or is it used in the calculation of the SGPA, or it means nothing? So 3 people got it right. According to your policy, it states that it's used in the SGPA calculation. So colleagues, I hope you had some fun. It was meant to just be an icebreaker to give you some understanding that I'd like to follow on within my talk. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my proper presentation again. All right, so what did this allow us to learn? What was the whole point of this game? I didn't just want to waste your time, but I wanted it to show us a couple of things. That we all have different ways of thinking. Information may be provided to us in a certain manner, but all of us will see it and think it, have different ways of how we think. Our perceptions are nuanced. We can see things very differently from a perspective of what we're looking at. Remember the national flag. We see the national flag every day, and it becomes so ingrained in our minds that often we can mistake it. The flag I showed you was a flag that closely resembles Indian national flag, but it's not the Indian flag. But because we are seeing it all the time, we tend to forget the actual intricacies and the actual definitions that are associated with that particular thought process. We all have parallel streams of thought. You'll notice that not in a single question, everybody got the same right answer. And that's because we have parallel streams of thought. Now, this is very important because now you understand what your students go through. When you set a test and an examination, you expect your students to know the answers. I would have expected more than 90% of you to know the policies at your institution. I would have expected that more than 90% of you would have understood when you received an award for excellence. But that's just because I'm an outsider. I don't know the nuances of what you work under. The other one was patience. I didn't explain the game to you properly. I didn't explain what you needed to do for a very special reason. It was patience. You also saw that I had to have patience waiting for you to join the game. Often we forget that when we want to do things, patience is a very valuable commodity. And in research, patience is actually one of the most vital tools that you're going to need. Nothing happens overnight. Validate. Now, we are always pressed for time. Whatever we do, we set ourselves time constraints. We don't often validate what we receive. So the answer we get is not always the answer it seems to be. We often think we can just do that, and we fail to see that. We fail to see that we must validate anything that we do. And it's going to tie in with what I'm talking about in a few minutes. So I asked you all to have a piece of blank A4 paper with you. Do you all have a piece of blank A4 paper? Can I see a way of, I'm sorry, I like my presentations to be interactive. I don't like to just sit and let you listen to me. So I'd like to know by a show of hands if all of you have a piece of A4 paper. It doesn't need to be blank. It could be a page that's got writing on it, but I need you to be able to tear it. Ms. Verma, please go ahead. You have the floor. Oh, you raised your hand to say you've got it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to allow you to ask me any questions. I'm simply going to ask you to follow instructions, right? So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to take the A4 piece of paper and fold it along the edge so that you get an A5 piece of paper. Oh, sorry, not A5. Fold it along the edge so that you get 2 halves. I want the page to be divided into 2 halves, please. All right, I'm going to go slowly. Shelley, do you have a question? Would you like to ask a question? You're welcome to. Your hand is still up. Thank you. All right, when you've done that, I'd like you to fold it again so that you now have quarters. And then finally, I want you to tear it in half. Not all the way through, just tear it so that you've got a piece of paper remaining, like a flap remaining. Then I'd like you to open it and fold the torn parts together. Can I ask you now to please hold up your piece of paper? Can those of you that have access to your camera, please show us what you've done? This is not a test, remember. Thank you, Manoj. Anybody else wants to share? Please, colleagues, don't be afraid. I'm not here to pick on you. I promise you, there's no right and wrong answer. Light, do you want to show us? Or you just entered? Nobody else wants to show us, but I'm sure you're all going to notice something. This is what I expected it to look like. You look at it, that's what I expected it to look like. I have a flap at the top. I've got flaps on the side. Now, Manoj, you were brave enough to show me what it looked like, right? Does yours look like mine? No.
No, sir, no.
It doesn't. But does that mean you're wrong, Manoj? Does it mean you're wrong? It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means that I'm not a very good teacher. It means I'm not a very good teacher because I didn't allow you to ask me the one most important thing that goes with whatever work we do, and that is to ask a question. The question is to take away any misconceptions that you had. So whenever we do when we do research or when we do teaching and learning, we need directions to be clear and succinct. Because I didn't say fold it in half in a particular manner. I could have folded it in any way to get two halves. I could have folded it in the long edge. I didn't say which way. When I said tear it in half, not all the way through, what did I mean? Did I mean tear it in that direction, tear it in this direction? It could have been any direction. The bottom line is that we must always be able to ask questions. In an environment such as research, we must always ask questions. Don't ever just take the solution you get as one of the solutions. We must always ask questions about whether it can, we must question whether it's actual or whether it's relative. The next thing that we need to do is that we all see things in different perspectives. It's necessary to find ways to accommodate alternative viewpoints. We don't see this and we don't understand that there's an interdependency between research and teaching and learning. If there's no students in the classroom, there can be no research in your laboratories. Those students that are in your undergraduate classes right now are the goal, are the concrete building blocks of your development as a researcher. You cannot ignore the teaching and expect that you will be a good researcher. Because if you do that, where is the human capital? How will you build up capacity to deal with teaching or deal with research if you don't have students in your classroom? Because if every classroom that you have, if 20% of that class becomes academics or researchers, they further the research and development angle. Now, your university is quite advanced in that it has a Center for Research and Innovation and Development, and it supports students to do that. But so that means your undergraduate classes must be your gold mine. You must be able to pick the students that you can help and bring them forward. We call it in South Africa, building your own timber or growing your own timber. Because if you grow them and you develop them and you can give them the skills that they need, you will be able to allow them to enter into your postgraduate programs better and easier able to undertake research. So research is always looked at in isolation, and we look at it as being 4 levels, in my opinion. And those 4 levels are your graduate students, your masters and your PhDs, the fact that you need to publish journal articles, books, conference proceedings, then you need to apply for grants, and you need to get patents and innovations. When I look at your research policy, it encompasses all of this. This is what I've seen. Every academic at a professor or associate professor level in your university must get grants. They must do patents and innovations. They must graduate students. They must publish articles in journals, etc. Around the world, these are accepted as the main criteria for research excellence. But hand in hand with that goes with the teaching and learning. You need to teach. You have to be in the classroom. You have to be engaging with your students. You have to set assessments. When you set those assessments, that comes with marking. And then it comes with curriculum development. Now, with us in South Africa and around the world, I think the majority of universities are contact universities. That means face-to-face. You see the students in the classroom, you interact with them. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we view teaching and learning. It has made us realize that we have to use alternative methods. And one of those alternative methods is precisely what we're doing right now with you. I remember in 2017, I visited a university in India, and we had to do the presentations at the university, but we came there and we did it physically. We got to see the beautiful country. This time around, I'm able to sit many thousands of kilometers away and give you the same lecture that I would have been giving you in person. We've found new ways of thinking, new ways of doing business. Banking, industry, shopping, everything has changed radically in 1 year or 18 months, to be honest. And that is now meaning that we need to relook at how we view teaching, learning, and research. They are not similar. They are not unique. They are not apart from each other, but they enhance each other. Now, there are many strains of thought. Research strengthens teaching and learning is one such thinking. One group of academics will tell you that research strengthens teaching and learning. So a researcher will strengthen their teaching and learning. Now, I like this. I'm giving you some quotations that I like quite a lot. One of the quotations is that it increases the chance of their students' exposure to emerging ideas, facilities, and methodologies. This is by Subhas Lakhotia, and he's a distinguished professor at Banaras Hindu University. You have another quotation that I like by Professor S.P. Bimalandu Nath, who is from Pune University. He says, a teacher with the training in research helps develop a methodology of curiosity based on learning process in the classroom. Now, they are advocates of the fact that every teacher must be a good researcher, or a researcher becomes a good teacher. There are other trains of thought that say the opposite is true. The other trains of thought say that researchers conflict with teaching and learning. There's a very good article by Parker and Searle, which have highlighted the increased emphasis on research by higher education institutions. Your university, I'm sure, same like mine, puts research at the paramount of what we need to do as academics. And the reason is that is where the money comes from. That is where the initiatives come from, funding comes from for papers and publications. But the reality is quite different. We may need to look at that. We need to understand what actually pays the bills at the end of the day. Research is often favored with promotions and ranking. In most institutions worldwide, you cannot get promoted just by being a good teacher. But you can get promoted by being a good researcher and doing very little teaching and learning. That is a problem, because they both, now you're favoring a certain rank of person, because most often there's older academics, your senior academics, your professors, your associate professors are the guys who are able to engage in research and therefore do very little teaching. But this places the young academics at a disadvantage, because they are the ones who are more inclined. Sorry, I made a mistake here on the slide. It should be are more inclined to do teaching and learning rather than research. The older academics are more inclined to do research. So at the end of the day, we need to find a balance between what we're doing. We with the Parker and Searle discussion, they spoke about the interdependence between research ability and teaching ability. And they seem to indicate that research and teaching enhance each other. However, it has a negative relationship is the time that you spend on teaching and learning and the time that you spend in the classroom. Because the more time you spend on research, you're going to neglect the teaching. The more time you spend on teaching, you're going to neglect the research. So this means we need to find very different ways of dealing with our core business. We need to be able to find ways that we find our teaching effectiveness to be increased. If we can increase our teaching effectiveness, it has a direct link to making our teaching better, but it also impacts on the research. So according to this Marsh's differentiable variable model, we can show that the thinking is we can do both to some level of interdependence that will align and invigorate both of them. Whereas seeing them as different, we can actually see them as one unique core methodology. So we can map this out in a graph. So we can look at the learning outcomes, which is normally, if you understand this as in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, the levels of remember, understand, apply, evaluate, and create. And if we look at whether these learning environments, we move towards more away from an instructor-centered, because an instructor-centered learning activity environment only promotes very low-level learning outcomes. Now, a lot of you are trained to believe that you must be an instructor in the classroom and you must do everything. You must teach the students because you know everything. I came from a school of thought that taught me that. But I've changed my thinking. My thinking is that I must not be the one who knows everything. I must encourage my students to take advantage and take hold of their learning and teaching. I must do the teaching. They must take all of their learning. So if we move towards a more learning-centered rather than teacher-centered teaching philosophy, we get through and we can build the students that want to create, that want to evaluate. These are the students that you need in your research portfolios. These are the students that you need to develop your higher level thinking and research methodologies. So what's the question? The answer to my question before was, do we do research or teaching and learning? Is it research that's better or is it teaching and learning that's better? The response is it's inconclusive. Because otherwise I'd be able to tell you that it was conclusive or decisive and it was certain that one is better than the other. There's no such certainty and there's no such decision that can be made. It's inconclusive, and only the reality is we need to find the best way to make both work equally. So teaching and learning must coexist. This is my personal opinion. You may find other trains of thought, but my teaching, my philosophy from being a teacher, primarily, I really value my teaching, and my teaching is the core of what I do. But my thinking is that teaching and learning must be balanced with research. So obviously, I spend a great amount of my time on teaching and learning. But that teaching and learning amount of time that I spend on teaching and learning is balanced by a small amount of time that I spend on research. I don't spend an inordinate amount of time on research, but I've developed the fact that I can bring in students who help me further my research. I have really good MSc and PhD students. My research group currently has 2 postdoctoral researchers and about 16 students that are in my group. I have 3 MScs and 13 PhD students in one group. I'm the group researcher, the lead researcher. Now, we come from very small departments. I'm a physics specialist. So you'll note that physics is a dying subject in most of the countries. In South Africa, it's none the better. We get very few students. Our third-year classes may be up to 10 students maximum. Our honors classes are maybe 5 students. But I have a big research group because I encourage students to think, and I build the students up from an undergraduate level. I'm very involved in teaching at undergraduate and postgraduate levels to bring my students up so that I can get them into a master's or a PhD program. So if there's no investment, if you do not invest in your teaching and learning, you're going to limit the opportunity for research. Do you know how I get most of my students? Most of them say they love listening to me in a lecture. They come back and say, sir, will you want to be our supervisor? Because we love the way you interact with us in the classroom. If you weren't in the classroom interacting with the student, you would lose out because the students would not know you. They'd know you on paper. You might have a very good picture on your notice board. You may be publishing very well. But if the students don't know you, they're not going to approach you. Okay? So effectively, you need to be able to teach and be in that classroom. But we need to develop independent thinking students. They mustn't be focused on passing assessments. Now, India is notorious for this. In India, you guys are very focused on examinations and a pass mark. And a pass mark is what's going to develop to bring out new students. Now, we need to think about it. How often is that going to work? Can we sustain that sort of thinking? South Africa's moved away from that sort of system of thinking. They look more at developing a student. Yes, passing an examination is important, but looking at developing skills. Because what you find, and the research is showing this very clearly, students learn for the examination and forget that when they move away. So we need to develop them as researchers. So we must give them the opportunity to become independent in thinking. So my many methods of teaching and learning are based on multiple areas. And I'm not going to go through each one of them, but rather than say, these are some of the modern ways of thinking for teaching and learning. And I use them a lot in my classroom. The Socratic seminar is something that I focus on a lot. It's a formal discussion where we have a discussion in the class. Rather than me standing and lecturing on a notice board, like what I did here with you, I'm trying to not lecture you. I'm trying to give you a feel for what it is like. So in a classroom, I give my students some material, which is the foundation material that you can't get away from, a lecture. Then I split them up into smaller groups and I get them to work on a little project or look at how the work. So if I'm doing, for example, Brownian motion, I would ask them to look at how Brownian motion influences things like the stock market, health, etc. So I give them that opportunity to do that. I use Bloom's twist. I go from the bottom levels where I simply give them the method of recall, and then I move up very quickly to the higher levels where I expect them to think, analyze, and respond on the higher levels of Bloom's teaching and learning. So looking at the way you structure your classroom is very important, because it must also be less work for you, but with the greatest outcome. Sometimes standing in front of them delivering a lecture isn't the most valuable use of your time. Whereas if you structure the lectures such that you give students the command to take care of their own teaching and learning, it makes a big difference. But none of this works unless we know our students. And I don't know how invested you become with your students, but it's important to know the student sitting in your classroom. Not just to know that the student's name is Abhishek or John or Joe, but to know what is impacting those students and the way they are involved in your classroom. COVID has forced us to relearn how to do our business, but it has not brought us any closer to understanding our students, because we still see them as adrift. I can see Mr. Ravi Bhushan. I see a screen with his name on it. I see Vivek Gaur. I see Meena Sachdeva. I don't know who these people are. I'm probably not going to know them. They're like my students in the classroom. Whether they've understood me, whether they found me interacting, exciting or not, I'll never know, because I don't interact with them. I haven't taken the chance to say, colleagues, can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about you. I don't even know who our MC for this morning was. I didn't ask him his name, but that's the problem. We need to take time to understand our students. So, because life experiences impact the way people learn, we have to challenge our staff to be effective in teaching and learning and to make it relevant, because it influences research. Remember, I'm taking a different angle. I'm saying that if you make your teaching and learning better, you can improve your research. I watched some of the talks that happened throughout the week, and it was a lot of nice talks, beautiful talks on research and how you can become a better researcher. My take on it is slightly different in that I'm saying be a better teacher to be a better researcher. Get our students to become independent problem solvers. Let them, we know that they are the current cohort of students that you have, we call them the Generation X. They are ambitious self-starters. They want support, but do not want to be told what to do or how to do it. You know this. Your students expect instant gratification. They want immediate feedback. They know that they need to learn to be marketable, but they don't want to work. Very few of the students actually want to work. So our students become surfers and scanners. They don't like to read. I don't know how often I have to say this in my classrooms. Go back and read the material that's been provided to you. Come to my classroom prepared, and more than 90% of my students will pitch up to the class not having the prescribed text read, not having read the work that I want them to do, or not having attempted the pre-lecture problems. They expect constant and immediate feedback. So if they submit work today, they want to know by this afternoon, how did they do, what mark did they get, but they're not putting in the effort, the same effort in to the work that they submit. They want directness over subtlety. You can't stand in the classroom. I remember my lecturer used to say, this is a very nice question. I like this section. And we knew that meant It was in the examination. You needed to learn that section. Nowadays, the students want you to tell them, please give me a breakdown of what the paper contains. I'm not sure how much of that you do in your classrooms, but the universities generally, in our one as well, the students will demand that you must have a breakdown. If you give them a question in an exam that they've not seen before, there'll be a riot because they'll say they haven't seen the question before. How can you set it? I don't believe in that. I believe a question should always be unseen, and that students must have the ability to think, because that's the only way you can test their understanding of a particular problem. They want to learn, but they don't want to work. So you have to think about them spending time on social media, your WhatsApp, your Facebooks, all of those things. Take them away from their work focus. So you need to look at how you can harness those methods to get them to actually learn. So I want to just give you something that I would like you to just reflect on. So the 2 slides give you personal details of some students in our class. What do these profiles tell us, and what can we do to aid their learning? So the first person that I want you to consider is Juhi, 18-year-old in first year. So I'm going to put this all down quickly. Sorry. So Juhi is very shy, very quiet, will not speak out loud in class, will not maintain eye contact, has poor reading skills, cannot express herself very well, but has excellent math skills. That's the first student I want you to consider. Okay. Let's look at the next student that I want you to think about, sitting in your classroom as well. Abhishek is a honors student. He has ADHD. His parents are divorced. He has Monday depression. That means he doesn't like to come to universities on a Monday. His dad is a politician who's constantly interfering and expecting that his results must be better than what they actually are. And he only does 15% of his homework in. He doesn't hand in anything else that you've asked him to do, but he likes to talk in class. He loves classroom discussions. Now look at the 2 vast criteria of students that you have. Very different students sitting in your classroom, sitting and in your lecture, trying to listen to you and trying to relate to the material. How do we cater to these students? What do we do? And there's no simple answer. There's no simple question. There's no simple solution. We need to understand the learners. We need to accept that there are differences between them. There are also differences between students and staff. We must engage our students in setting goals and expectations. We should be flexible, creative, and try not to be surprised by anything that happens in the classroom. You will find that students will surprise you, but we must try not to be surprised by it. We must try to make sure we can maintain a classroom environment that gives us a chance. We understand our students and we tailor make our solution. So for me, those 2 students require the same sort of interaction. We need to engage with them on a one-on-one basis to see what their issues are. And we teach the class not to suit those students though. We teach the class to suit the majority, but we have support measures in place that will guide these students along and help them overcome their inconsistencies in educational applications. So my concepts are thinking about problem-based learning, traditional, student-centered instruction, or competency-based instructions. Which one should we use? Should we use problem-based learning? Should we use traditional? Should we use student-centered instruction? Or should we go first on this outcomes-based, which is the competency-based instructions? Now, it's a question for you to ask yourself. My favorite, my way of going this is I like problem-based learning. But when we change our learning mindset and we move away from the staff-centered teaching and learning, it happens because we are fearful. We feel that if we stop lecturing, we lose control of the class. We feel that if we stop lecturing, we won't cover all the material. We don't think students are going to do the work. And then we don't want to change our assessment strategies because we don't believe it can be a fair assessment of the student work. And finally, we're worried about whether students will be dissatisfied with us not just giving them what they need to know. So we'll get lower ratings, our performance management, etc. will be different. People won't, I don't know about your university, but they might penalize you because they may say you're not teaching enough and cut your salary. But these are fears that we need to take with us. We need to be able to say those fears must move away. We must go and look at learning and try and define a competency. We need to map the learning outcome and support each component that we have. how do we give the students this competency? We want to teach competency, not knowledge, because any student can go and look at a human body. Let's talk about a doctor, for example. Would you trust a doctor who's only got book knowledge, who's only sat in the classroom with you and learned everything you could impart to them? Would you trust that doctor? I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm sure you wouldn't want to go to a doctor who's going to tell you, I'm going to operate on you. I've never operated on a patient before, but I'm going to operate on you because I've read all about it in the books. It's a very different environment out there to a doctor who's been trained to focus on operations by being in a physical laboratory where he practices this, where they can understand the human body elements and their different settings based on different individuals. So we can look at traditional learning, and traditional learning is we are told what we need to know, we memorize it, and we get a problem that we use to just illustrate that concept. In problem-based learning, we get a problem that's assigned, we identify what we need to know, and we learn and apply to solve the problem. And this is an approach where it's a very different way of doing things. So instead of asking the question such as, what is the velocity of the car as it travels on a certain road? You could ask the question differently, same question, and change a few words and say, how would the velocity of the car change as it moves along the road? You're asking exactly the same thing in a different way. So the one leads to the traditional learning, whereas the other one leads to what we know as the problem-based learning. So you give them a problem, you use that problem to identify the way they learn and the way they can get the expected learning outcomes. So problem-based learning is mainly driven by the application of course content to help students to discover and provide suggestions and solutions for specific defined problems. It really promotes them to understand real-world problem-solving skills. This is vital if you want them to become researchers. This is vital if it's going to influence their research. And this is where I bring in your research knowledge. You're a researcher in a particular field. This real-world problem becomes even more real because you can relate your research to your undergraduate class. It promotes the students to talk about stuff in confidence of understanding what they're doing. And it enables students to direct their own learning. In a problem-based situation, they will have to take advantage and understand their own learning. They have to get problems that are not structured. You must not give them answer part A to do part B to do part C. You must simply give them the problem and expect them to go and do the research to structure it. So immediately you're developing in them the sense of curiosity. Okay. I'm not going through all of this. I think the slides will be made available to you so that you can do this in your leisure. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. So is it realistic? In normal traditional base, we got the lecturer who develops the content is given to the student. But in a problem-based scenario, the lecturer becomes a coach, the content becomes a problem, and the problem is solved by the problem solver. Imagine the enhancement you will have in your research from an undergraduate student who's learned to solve a problem effectively, not just by how you've told them to solve the problem, but by doing the research themselves. Okay, you have large classes. South Africa, we have about 200, 300 students in one particular class. It can go up to 1,000 students. It makes it a bit difficult to administer. Not impossible, just difficult. There are often time delays. It requires shifts in assessment techniques and methods. It requires all of us working in group works. And it promotes group work as opposed to individualism. It's something that we must think about as we move forward. Do we really want individuals? Yes, we do. We want them to think, but we want them to be able to work as teams to drive us forward. So these are all the problems that you will find people tell you. But if you put the effort in to get your problem-based learning working up front, it'll make huge strides into your classroom teaching and learning, and it'll help improve your research significantly. You end up having this ideas of whether we have face-to-face computers, or whether we have a blended learning approach. And I like the blended learning approach because in a blended learning approach, we can have lectures similar to what we're doing now. We can have our practicals in the classroom, and you can then fully give them an immersion into what an experience of a university student would be. And in a classroom situation, so you get them to learn through the blended learning approach, but at the same time, you're developing in them this curiosity to want to undertake research. And remember, a research student doing research enhances your research profile because you are the researcher. I never publish alone. I think I last published alone when I was a senior lecturer about 5-6 years ago. I publish with my students, and that is my philosophy. My philosophy is that I will develop the students, and the way I publish is through my students. I allow the students to undertake the research. We work together on projects, and I co-publish with them. If you go and have a look at my Google Scholar H-index, or you have a look at my publications, the majority of my publications are with my students. And that is because I develop them at an undergraduate level. So when I get them at postgraduate, I am able to know that, trust that the work that they can do is of a very high level. Well, what are some of the challenges that you'll get with e-learning? There's always going to be challenges. I mean, the students are not going to be motivated. Like I can tell you, most of you were not motivated this morning when you came to this talk because you didn't want to join me in my game. So that shows a lack of motivation. Why would I want to come? It also shows that many of you were academically not confident. You didn't know what I was going to ask you. So rather than embarrass yourselves or not do something that you think was going to be wrong, you didn't participate. None of your colleagues here motivated you to join. So that again shows me there's a problem with individuals. When we look at online teaching and learning, if I can see it with you as academics, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to relate to you what is happening. You are now my students. And if that's what you were able to do, imagine what your students are battling to do. But also it made me feel very bad because it was whether I kept asking you, can you hear me? Am I audible? Because I don't know technologically if you can, I'm not that confident that you can hear me. I'm not qualified as a person to deliver lectures online, but I'm trying the best I can do. So it brings about with us challenges that are both within individuals and within the student and the teacher context. The technological problems are also there. I may have a really good computer. My student may not even have a computer. They may not even have electricity where they live. So the reality is we must understand the context of our students because it implies how we teach technologically or anything else. No matter how we do it, it's a question of how we will deal with the student in the classroom that is going to materialize with the long-term or medium to long-term goal of a good research student supporting us in the research that we do. So the benefits of e-learning, though, are without a doubt, because you can do research via e-learning as well. And that's the most important thing. You can develop your research techniques and your research strategy by working with the student who is off campus. You don't need them to come onto campus. Research doesn't mean to stop because you can't get onto campus for whatever reason. Now, in South Africa, we're also prone to a lot of student unrest and rioting. So if we can work offline and we can work remotely, it means that work never stops because I can't go into the office and into my laboratory. It doesn't mean that the work could stop. And India, you are inherently poised. Who's doing all the solutions for me that I use in South Africa that are all my online teaching and learning? It's guys in New Delhi. It's you guys in India. There are groups of people that are so positively excellent that we use them to develop our own course content. You are the hub of it. In India, you have these resources at your fingertips that are so readily available that can help you transform your teaching and learning significantly and make your research lifestyle a lot easier. Okay, so I like e-assessments. I love e-assessments because it's easy to mark. You can get a bank of questions. You set it up once, and it's students that they can learn in an environment that's familiar to them. But the problem is, obviously, there's going to be connectivity issues. Students may not be able to connect. The computer will not be as flexible in marking. It's very rigid because if in past, you'd be able to give part marks. Now in a computer marking, you don't normally do that. But it's also types of assessment that you can give. You can only maybe give multiple choice, or you can only give very short questions and answers. But it means we need to look at how we can make it work for us as individuals. Okay, so what I'd like to just simply, as I'm getting to the end, I want you to get to know this. These are my 4 steps to be a competent person. And I say this unashamedly. Shift your mindset. Shift the way you think to try and move towards a more, don't view teaching and learning as a burden. View it as a boon and a resource that's going to help you become better. Get to know your learner. Rethink what your learning objectives are. Curriculum reform is vital. You need to always check your curriculum, retake it, make sure it's valid with industry, make sure it's valid for the student to get employment, and then finally shift the balance of power. You are not the demigod that's the only one who's going to deal with this. You are actually the individual who's going to help facilitate the change in your student, and you are going to be the one that drives them to be more successful, rather than you being the one who knows everything. Okay. So I want to summarize. You can't satisfy everyone. Mix it up. Teach to the top. That means teach to the top of your class. Teach to the class and bring all your students up. Don't try to teach to the lower end or the average. Try and teach to the top. Find methods that brings your class up, lifts your standard of education. Try and look at how you can break the ice. You saw that I started my lectures trying to give you some way of feeling comfortable, getting you in the swing of things, but at the same time, getting some information that I showed you as part of what the research would have shown. I really suggest that you look at using as tools that I've mentioned, like Kahoot and problems-based tools, to help you make sure that you get your right caliber of student sorted out. And then balance your teaching and learning and your research. You have to. You cannot focus on one over the other. Make sure you can find the right balance, and make sure you make time for what's important. Make sure that you have time to de-stress. Okay. These are some of the tools that I find really work. There's Spiral, there's River, there's Moodle, your Blackboard, your Facebook, WhatsApp, Kahoot, Hangout, Zoom, and Teams. These all form necessary tools that we can help make our research and our teaching and learning even better and elevate it to a different level. And I'm going to stop there. That's the end of my talk. I have a number of references that are here that will help you in any one of the areas that I've covered, either teaching and learning or in research. So I'm going to stop there and take any questions. Please, I hope you have some questions for me. I really hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I hope that I've managed to give you some insight into what I believe are key strategies for transforming your teaching and learning to effectively enhance your research. Because effectively, you cannot be a good researcher if you don't do teaching and learning, and you can't be a good teacher if you don't do research. You need to balance the two. Thank you very much. That's me.
Good afternoon, Professor. How are you?
Afternoon, Professor Sharma. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. I know today you are also very occupied. Thank you so much. Your session was really very informative. Extremely sorry I didn't join in your starting because I was also occupied.
No problem at all. Not a problem at all. Totally understandable.
After so long time, I'm just seeing you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Yes, ma'am. Dear participants, if you have any query, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Shelly. How are you?
Shelly this side. So I just wanted to ask that in this pandemic time that we are unable to meet our students on a one-to-one basis. So how to carry on our interactions and our research in a more productive manner?
Okay. So it's a very good question. And this is the thing, is if you're going to let the pandemic hold you back, you'll find your research will going to suffer and set you back many years, because what your output's going to be in this year now are delayed. So one of the ways I find works for me is I meet with my students through a Zoom lecture. I created a group for them so they can interact with each other on a regular basis. I mean, on a daily basis, they interact with each other, either through WhatsApp or on even Microsoft Office. If you're using Teams, you can create groups on Teams and they can interact with each other. There's a channel for them to discuss and motivate each other and work on projects and questions that they may have. And then I create a weekly meeting with them where we discuss the progress on their projects. What have they done? What is the research that they need to do? We work on analysis together. I don't leave them on their own devices. I work with them on analysis. I make sure I have timelines created. So on a Teams roster, we have a timeline. So on Monday, student X is due to submit their master's write-up, chapter 1 or chapter 2. And they know that if they miss those deadlines, they've got to have a reason why they're submitting late to me. and we work in that manner. So you can use the technology. I mean, the one that I like working with is called River. It's RYVER. That's an excellent tool for communicating with your students, setting timelines, sharing information, sharing papers, being able to download material quickly. But I suppose if you don't want to do that, you could simply use WhatsApp groups, create a WhatsApp group, and work with your students on that. I make sure that every morning I check with, well, not every morning, every week at least, I send my students a message just to see how they are, check up that the COVID-19 situation is not impacting on them. And then at our regular meetings, I ask them to share and work together. I'm an experimentalist, so you may ask me that's all well and good if you've worked in a computer-based one, but you're an experimentalist. So how do you do it? So you develop a schedule. My students go into the laboratories on a schedule. So I have a student in the lab, maybe one student or two students in the lab at any given time. They follow all the COVID-19 protocols. They go into the lab only to make their measurements. They go home and do all the analysis. So the lab bench space is shared between my multiple students, and we use I have not met with a single student face-to-face in the last 18 months. I haven't seen a single student face-to-face in the last 18 months, but I have managed to get them in the laboratory, and we've published probably 8 papers to date, and I've graduated about 4 students so far. So it's all done with the technology. You can use the technology and it does work.
Thank you, sir. Great.
Really, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, sir,
You're welcome to contact me.
Absolutely brilliant, sir.
You can welcome to contact me on the email, and I can direct you to some of the sites that we use and things like that. There's no problem there.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. We'll do that.
I saw somebody say that they were from the physics side. I'm quite happy to talk to anybody. Ruby Kataria, who's in the Department of Physics. Please make contact if you want to, or you've got my email address. We can talk about the physics projects that are available. So Deborah wrote, as a teacher wants to go the problem way route, but the school's curriculum, which is traditional in nature, hinders that. How do you cope or combine with both learning styles, especially when as a person you cannot influence the whole school's curriculum to become problem-based learning? Sorry, Deborah, can I just query, is this, I believe you're talking about the school, that's a university school, or are you talking about the high school?
University, sir.
University.
Oh, yes, sir.
So loud. So Deborah,
It's a university.
the school curriculum is fixed, right? Your department curriculum is fixed. That's right. You have to cover a certain set of materials, but it doesn't mean you can't use problem-based learning. So instead of going and giving a lecture in the class all the time, you can develop the material so that you say, I'm going to cover these things. I would have covered it in three sections: section A, section B, section C. You can take section A, which is your theory. You have to do that. I mean, there's no way, you cannot get away from the fundamental underpinnings. But instead of setting a problem that says, go and use the theory to find this problem, why can't you go and use a problem-based approach and say, here's a problem, and now use the work that you've done to try and solve the problem. And then in that way, you direct the students to learn rather than you giving them the solutions. And I think that's the one way you can do it. Another way is looking at curriculum reform. You absolutely have the right to reform curriculum. You know, as an institution should not be dictating curriculum as fixed, because curriculum has to change. In the 4th IR, you've got to change curriculum to match the 4th Industrial Revolution. You've got to work on many different areas. So my suggestion to you all is to effectively look at your curriculum, narrow it down. Not everything needs to be taught. Make students take responsibility for their own learning by engaging with the material beforehand, by going away and giving them self-study, having smaller group tutorials where the students teach each other. Find good students in your class, get them to run tutorials, and let them engage with you so that you are able to deal with the content only and give them a chance to work on problem-based learning. I think that's my suggestion on it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I
Okay.
think there's no more questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to have.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. We are expressing our gratitude that you have accepted our invitation for the invited speaker. So kindly accept Meenakshi ma'am.
Yes, Gaurav.
Yes. So I would like to request our Dean UCRD ma'am to kindly appreciate our invited speaker.
Thank you so much, Professor. So kindly accept the memento. Your session was really wonderful and informative. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you all for having me. It was wonderful seeing you all, and I wish you all well. And thank you for accommodating me with the earlier time slot. Much appreciated.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Take care.
And thank you. Take care. All the participants, I think they will be here. Only ma'am will now join. Okay. For valedictory function, huh?
So we are moving toward our valedictory session. So be with us. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor will join soon. Our Dean, PG and Research will also join.
The co-host, Naresh sir. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Dr. Meenakshi and all the participants, Dr. Naresh, Dr. Gaurav, good job.
Thank you, ma'am.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure this 1 week workshop must have added a lot of values to your research skills. On behalf of Galgodias University, I thank all our speakers, right from starting with Mrs. Ila Gandhi, Honorable guest of honor of our inaugural program, Professor K.K. Agrawal, Professor Vincent Puri in his absence, and then all the speakers who have spent their valuable time by delivering their lectures over here. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We are really obliged and look forward for the same association in our future programs as well. Dear participants, this is just the beginning. The research and engage in research is like, this program is just a drop in the ocean. I'm sure the whatever knowledge our team could contribute to your research skills, who would take this forward, will come out with, you will explore these opportunities, the platforms which are recommended, the skills which are being delivered. And if you practice the same, I'm sure you will shine and you will come out with a lot of research outputs in coming years and coming days. Thank you so much, Dr. Meenakshi and Dr. Naresh. Excellent program. Congratulations. And remember, this is only one and lot many to come. So this is the message for participants as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So, dear participants, we are inviting our Dean Research to kindly give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav, and good afternoon to one and all. So I start my vote of thanks with one quote. A pessimist complains about the wind, optimist tries to change it, and a leader adjusts the sails. So it was a quote from the John Maxwell. So a leader is someone who creates an event. Team members essentially bring life to it. So no event can take shape without a hardworking leader. It was the dedication and enthusiasm of our guides, Honorable Chancellor Sir, Honorable CEO, Mr. Dhruv Galgotia, Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am, Dr. Priti Bajaj. So their determinations are commendable, and it is their guidance which made this Indo-Italy 1 week international virtual workshop on research methodology a huge success. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the conveners. Above and beyond, let's not forget the backbone of this grand function, our organizing team who went an extra mile and worked their tail off under the guidance of the conveners, organizers, and made this dream a reality. Especially all the research and PhD coordinators, Dean UCRD, Dr. Meenakshi Sharma, Ms. Sophia Pillai, Dr. Gaurav, Mr. Arul, Mr. Vijay. Thank you so much, everybody. My special thanks to Dr. Gaurav, who handled and organized all sessions very well. We would like to acknowledge Professor Celestine Evendi, Kile Crockett, Michelle Oinama Ide, John Patrick Shaw, Dr. Oina Jiman, Sanjeev Kumar Padmanabhan, Danilo Pelosi, Dr. Mizanur Rahman, Professor Naven Chetty, our esteemed speakers who took the time out of their busy schedule and showered us with their pearls of wisdom and knowledge. We are truly humbled by your presence. Thank you once again. Furthermore, let's have a special recognition to all the audience who remained patient throughout and encouraged the morale of speakers by their gusto and enthusiasm. Thank you so much for being our pillars of sport. Let's have a big round of applause for all of you, a lovely audience. So the end of a story is new beginning of many others. On this note, let's conclude a remarkable, memorable, and knowledgeable event, Indo-Italy 1 week international virtual workshop on research methodology, series 4. So on behalf of University Center of Research and Development and Organizing Committee, we sincerely promise you that in the coming years too, we'll keep on organizing such proceedings related to the field with some more innovative ideas to nourish your minds and fill. So thank you, participants and all deans of schools.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Dear participants, now session is open for your feedback. If anyone want to give the feedback related to Indo-Italy workshop, then they are
not for
most
anyone.
welcome.
No, Gaurav.
Yes, sir.
Everyone need to be fill that feedback form.
Ma'am, and now in this session, if they want to give.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Anyone from the participants who want to share their feedback, they can unmute themselves and can share. Sir, you are muted. Okay. Sir, Pandey sir, you are muted. That's why your voice is not coming.
May I say something, sir?
Yes, of course.
Sir, it was a very well conducted session, and we are looking forward for more such interactive sessions in future. And just a request, sir, in case if you can rearrange the lecture which we missed on the second day of presentation, where there was some network connectivity problem. Sir, one of the US faculty was supposed to take the afternoon.
Yes, we have connected, but the professor has some problem with their family members. That's why they can't join with us. So we are promising that we will organize another session, another workshop, and we have that speaker also at that time.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback. Anyone, any other participants? Okay, we have shared the feedback link and you will also receive the same feedback link with via mail. So please fill the feedback form for the generation of the certificate. So thank you all. Thank you so much for your active participation. Thank you all.